So let's step it up a notch. Now he looks 3 moves ahead. This means that he thinks of every possible move he can do. Then for each of those, he thinks of every possible response the enemy player can do. And for each of those responses, he thinks of every possible move he can do in response to that enemy move. So yeah, it's a bit.
We have to take time constraints into account. Now, it's impossible to predict how long a search is going to take, and if we stop the search before it's finished, the result.
YouTube has tons of chess bot videos, but these chess bots absolutely suck. And I believe that stopping this nonsense can only be achieved by making a chess bot that's actually good. This immediately poses a small problem. How do we determine if a chess bot is actually good? Well, there is a very simple solution that we can use for that. We just go to lichess.org, click play with the computer, select the parameters, and let our bot do the rest. The pieces of junk on YouTube are barely capable of beating the higher levels, but I'm going for the big boy baby. But wait. Some of you may be thinking, Lichess is communist. Well, that is in fact true, and that's why I absolutely love it. In fact, this chess engine is completely free, and was not made by paying any pesky capitalists. This also means it is not sponsored by nor. Now you may be asking yourself, but Enigma, how the f do you create a chess bot? And my answer is, a long time ago, in 1949, some guy named Claude Shannon wrote a paper called Programming a Computer to Play Chess. In that paper, he established that a chess program must construct a decision tree which will help it find the best move, and described 2 strategies that a chess program can use to accomplish this: the Type A strategy, which heavily relies on the processing power of the computer and brute forces a large tree, and the Type B strategy, which employs heuristics to determine if it is worth searching a position or not. In 1966 there was a big match between 2 chess programs, one of each type. One was made by an American team of 2 programmers and used a Type B strategy, while the other one was made by a Russian team of 4 programmers and 1 chess master, that used a Type A strategy. The Type A program has completely destroyed its opponent, so that is the strategy I will have to explain. The Type A strategy works exactly like in the previous demonstration, Matryoshka dolls, but with trees. Basically, if we want to analyze a tree, we have to analyze all of its subtrees, and just take the one which benefits us the most. Except that every second layer it's the opponent's move, and they are obviously going to play the most f***ing annoying move that they can. So every second layer we pick the move that's the worst for us to simulate the opponent being a dickhead. This simple approach is called Minimax and is the basis of basically every modern chess engine. Now another question arises, what about these nodes at the bottom? They don't have nodes coming out of them. Well, in that case, either the game has ended in that position, or we are forced to take a somewhat rough guess on how terrible our position is after the analyzed sequence of moves. This is what we call in the jargon, an evaluation function. There are many different strategies that can be used to evaluate a chess position, but as a first test I am going to go with the simplest one, which is called material evaluation. What it does is it assigns to each piece a value, and then adds up the money to see who's ahead. Capitalism, baby. Now there is just one last problem before we have an AI. The tree that I showed you earlier gets very big very quickly. That means we cannot search very far with this basic minimax approach, which is not helpful if we want to beat the big fish. That is why we have to introduce alpha-beta pruning. This algorithm allows us to get rid of useless branches and make the tree a little bit smaller. The idea is simple: when the program sees that an idea is bad, it shouldn't spend time trying to calculate how shitty it really is. This means that with the help of alpha-beta pruning, the bot gets the same result, just a whole lot faster, especially when the tree gets bigger. Also, note that way more junk gets pruned if the best moves are searched first, so we try to guess which moves are good. In the case of captures, we can apply a very simple scheme: taking valuable pieces is good, and taking using our own good pieces is a little less good. Now, with all the basics out of the way, it is time to see how well our bot is playing.
A few moments later.
Okay guys, I have some bad news. My chessbot plays like garbage, despite being able to reach 2.4 million nodes per second. The main reason for that is that pure material evaluation is absolute trash, as it only takes into account which pieces are on the board, and does not care about how much damage they can cause to the opponent. For example, in this position, my engine thinks both players have equal winning chances, but in reality Black has a far superior position because of the activity of his pieces. To mitigate this problem, we can implement general maps of where the engine's pieces should be, and give bonuses or penalties according to these maps in the evaluation function. Now these maps change between the middle game and the end game, especially so for the king, which has to transition from a defensive position in the corner into being the most powerful piece on the board. Another shortcoming of the engine in this state is that the final position is evaluated immediately, without consideration of how the position might evolve in the short term. This is why we must implement an algorithm called quiescence search, or forcing variation search. What it does is very simple. After evaluating the position, instead of returning immediately, it keeps minimaxing by searching only the captures, and nothing else. In case every single capture is utter trash, it reuses the result of the evaluation function. With these few changes, the engine now has a rating of 1330 ELO, which, roughly speaking, means that we are halfway there. Now that we have done the most basic stuff, we can still do many easy improvements to the engine to make it search faster. Right now, we are not reordering any moves which are not captures. To order them and make alpha-beta pruning even more effective, we can use the so-called killer heuristic and history heuristic. These are basically techniques which consist of grabbing moves that were previously able to fuck up the opponent real bad, shoving them into a big table, trying to apply them in other situations, and praying that they will work. These two heuristics already improve the bot's ability to beat up its opponents, increasing its playing strength to 1550 ELO. However, despite our efforts, there is still a phase of the game at which this sucker is completely hopeless. I'm naming the end game. The main reason for that is, as always, that the bot can't see far enough ahead to differentiate which moves are good and which ones are trash. So how can we fix that? In the case of the end game, it happens many times that the same position occurs again after different sequences of moves, which is a huge waste of time. So what do? Take the position, shove it into an absolutely massive table, then if we get the same position again, we just grab it from the table and we're done. This boost is absolutely massive, but it has one major downside: it always bugs, and debugging it takes fucking ages.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
Now, some of you may be wondering, Enigma, how the f does the bot decide when to keep searching and when to evaluate? Now that is a really good question. In the basic search that I described at the start of the video, there was a parameter that had to be specified to minimax so that it, does not run forever. That parameter is called the depth, and I think the name speaks for itself here. Except in chess, you have to take time constraints into account, but you don't know what depth to search to. An easy solution here is to allocate a certain amount of time to the current move, then just keep searching with higher and higher depths until the allocated time has run out. By the way, this technique is called iterative deepening. Anyway, now the chessbot has a playing strength between 1600 and 1700 ELO, good enough to beat those garbage YouTube chessbots. But let's keep going. Now we get into the land of speculative pruning. This is a class of techniques that let you skip moves, just like alpha-beta pruning, except you have no clue about if the move you just skipped is a blunder or not, and they are supposed to somehow make your chessbots stronger. Anyway, the first one I will implement is called late move reduction. What it does is that after sorting the moves, it just searches the first move at full depth, and then it reduces the depth using a complicated formula. This technique considerably speeds up the search, and allows the bot to reach a new peak of 1710 ELO. Now this little improvement wasn't so satisfying to me, so I used some shallow observations guided semi-stochastic trial and error based improvement to get this piece of shit to work a little bit better. Now that really complicated formula that I implemented at first got replaced with a much simpler one, and the bot got improved quite a bit. Now it is time to implement null move pruning. Its working principle is extremely simple. If your opponent is so f***ed that they can't do shit even if you do nothing, then you can just assume you're going to win anyway and not waste time on that move. This improvement is extremely important and gains by itself about 50 elo, but that is only the case if you implement it right, which of course I did not. By the way, do you remember that thing called the evaluation function? We just assigned values to pieces and heat maps of where they should go. Except the values I was using were complete garbage, and after replacing them with better ones, and making them transition from middle game to end game, the bot gained a whopping 200 elo. Which, I would say, is pretty good. There are a few more things we can implement to make the search faster. The first one is late move pruning. It is just like late move reduction, but a bit more extreme. Now instead of reducing the depth, we can throw the move away immediately without searching it at all. Another one is static exchange evaluation based pruning, or SCE pruning for short, which just means that the engine doesn't consider sacrifices at low depth, because most of them are blunders anyway. Oh, and there is also an important detail to sort out here. How did I choose the parameters of my speculative pruning algorithms? Well, I did what any programmer would do at first, just pulling values out of nowhere and plugging them into the bot. But, there is a much better way of doing things, making a program do random stuff to the parameters, see if it improves the bot, and repeat. This approach is called simultaneous perturbation stochastic approximation, or SPSA for short. After letting it run for a few days, the bot improved drastically, reaching a new peak of 2310 elo. This is good enough to beat the first few Lichess bots, but not enough for the big boy. Anyway, now is the time for the biggest boost of the entire project, the efficiently updatable neural network, or an NUE. Don't ask me why the name is backwards. I tried training a small neural network on a chess position dataset, but it wasn't good enough. So what did I do? Okay, so now the bot is playing wonderfully. Just the NUE made the bot gain about 600 elo, and it is ready to beat up the big fish. After a little bit of tuning, and a few minor modifications, and fixing a huge bug in the transposition table code, it was even better and stronger. So now it is time for the moment you've all been waiting for, which is probably when this bot will beat up that little fishy. Let's make the two bots fight it out.